Ladies and gentlemen, I have Chill from 16 to Life. When did you first hear about Crips and Bloods in Banning?
Maybe about 82, I believe it was. I was just thinking about this the other day. The older homies at one point in time, I remember one of the homies, he was hollering Crip, and then we had other dudes, they was hollering Blood, but it was kind of really just like playing and stuff. And that's about the first time I kind of really remember hearing about it.
Do you know what gangs were around before Crips and Bloods made an appearance in Banning?
Banning, no, they just had some homies hanging out. I believe they were just claiming East Side Banning, but there was no really gangs out there like that.
Talk to us about what it was like growing up in Banning in the 70s and 80s.
Well, I was born in 71. I was raised in the 70s and 80s. And Banning was a real, extremely small, close-knit, family-oriented town. So, everybody knew everybody back then. And, we grew up where we respect people's moms and sisters and stuff. Like I said, it was one big family, one high school town. And so it was real, it was real together. My mom, she grew up with the mothers of my friends and stuff. So it was real cool.
And when did things kind of, in your life take a turn to where the streets started to intrigue you a little bit?
I would probably say summer of 85, maybe 86, just growing up and just hanging out, starting to be in the hood, hanging out with the homies. And I eventually got to selling weed, and then later on moved on to crack. And so maybe about that time.
Did Banning experience a crack epidemic, and did it affect your city as well?
Probably about late 85, 86, it hit. Maybe I would say 87, 88 when it started getting extremely bad. And so, yeah, you had people trickling down from, larger cities, LA and other cities. And yeah, it slowly made its way down there, and it was pretty bad as well.
Tell us about the first time you started selling crack.
If I can recall, either the first people I seen with crack was probably either my homie Scotty Ware, rest in peace, or my cousin James, and so, like I say, I'm selling weed, and then I know these dudes were selling, it was more profitable. Weed was much slower. And then so I'm hanging out with my homies when we play basketball. I have a few of them, they out there, they're selling dope, running up to cars and stuff. So excuse me, I got a cold, you guys have to excuse me. And so I slowly got into it like that, man, where, one of my homies said, hey man, if you give the homie right here $20, he'd give you $40 worth of dope. And so that's how I pretty much got into it like that. But it was always just relatively small, because I'm trying to hide that I was selling drugs for my parents. So I never just went just real big with anything, just, relatively small, because my mom was the type of mother where she'd recognize if I came home with some new shoes or a shirt that she hadn't bought, and stuff like that.
Mm. How dangerous was it selling crack in 1985, 1986?
Well, in 85, 86, it wasn't too bad. But then, like I say, maybe around 87, 88, that's when it got extremely bad. A lot of people who by that time who had got into it, now they're starting to develop real big habits. And so yeah, that's when I would say it started getting pretty bad. We had maybe in, I think, 86, we had a homegirl. She was about 10 years old. She ended up getting killed by I think she was dating a crack dealer from from a bigger city, and he happened to pull a gun and start shooting somebody. Somebody had stole his drugs, and so she ended up getting shot. And back then, that was extremely traumatizing for the town, because, like I said, we all knew her, and that was the first murder of my generation. And so, like I said, by her being a female, and it was just, back then women were extremely sacred. We didn't call women bitches and stuff like that, because, like I say, we all, everybody was like one big family. Everybody was friends and stuff. So her name was Kim, and just her death was just really devastating. And I would say that was probably just the first moment when things just started getting real bad.
Now let's fast forward about 6 years. Pretty popular movie came out called Colors. 88, I do believe it was. So you're probably in high school around this time. Take me back to what you remember about the movie Colors coming out.
I just remember that it was a big hoopla about it, because at that point in time, the Crips and Bloods was extremely prevalent in LA. And I remember, it being kind of a big panic in some cities where they was trying to decide whether they was going to air it or not, and but for the most part out there in Bannon where we was at, we didn't have no problem. I remember going to the movie theater and checking it out and stuff. And so, but like I say, I just remember it seemed like it was more of a problem nationwide than it was in Bannon,
What were your first thoughts when you started hearing groups like Ice-T, NWA, King T, DJ Quick, holler their sets on record, and this thing called gangster rap came out?
Oh, it was, I loved it, and I'll never forget the first time that I heard NWA. It was a dude by the name of Donald B. He had the tape, and he was from LA. He was from the Family Swan area. And he let me listen to it. And so yeah, it was just extremely, it hyped me up just to hear these dudes, talking this, this raw music. And actually to Ice-T, he was always one of my favorites too, 6 in the Morning, and he had a few other songs that was extremely nice.
When would you say you were most active in the street? What ages?
I would probably say maybe beginning probably like around maybe 1988, 1989, 1990 up until 94, until I was arrested and went to prison.
Okay, so 88, 89, LA, once again, that was probably when it was at its worst. 91, 92, 93 was really crazy in LA. Like we were having like 2,000 homicides a year. It was like crazy numbers. When to the best of your remembrance was Banning just out of control, the most active?
Well, I would say pretty much probably all those years it was relatively bad. But if my memory serves me correct, I believe 93, 94, I believe Bannon led Riverside County in murders per capita. And so it was extremely bad that year. Like I say, Bannon's a small, one high school, one McDonald's town. And I think it was close to like 19, 20 murders, something that year, if I'm not mistaken. It was somewhere around there. So that's the year that I would probably say it was, it was definitely one of his worst years, if not the worst.
And I know a lot of you cats out there hear 19, 20 murders. It doesn't sound like a lot, but keep in mind, Banning is a very small town. So 20 murders in a very small town per capita, percentage-wise, is probably more than what Chicago was experiencing, or L.A., or like a lot of other places around the country. Let's fast forward to 1994, a year that changed your life. You ended up spending 24 years in prison.
By 94, I'm full-fledged into the streets. Gang member. I'm also at that point in time, I was living in the state of Billings, Montana. I was out there selling, large quantities of drugs, and I came back to California to purchase some more drugs, and there was an altercation at a house party, and there were some people shot, and so I was being wanted for that shooting, and so I ended up going on the run, and I was eventually captured in that was 1993. I was eventually captured in 1994, and when I was captured, I was also charged with another murder that occurred while I was on the run, and so those are the circumstances that sent me to prison.
What was going through your mind mentally when the judge told you that you're getting that much time?
Well, to be honest, like I said, I had two separate cases. So on my first case, which was an attempted murder, it was three attempted murders and a great bodily injury. So they end up finding me just guilty of great bodily injury and attempted murder. And so when the judge sentenced me, he gave me 9 years plus life. And actually, I was relieved because I thought I was going to get more time than that. So I got 9 years for the person who was shot in the head, the great bodily injury, and then I had a plus life for the person who they said I was attempted to shoot at, who wasn't even hit. So they gave me 9 years plus life, and then I still had a trailing murder case. Excuse me, one step.
Do your thing. You'll hear my dogs bark too, so don't even trip. I got 2 dogs that love to bark as soon as I hit record.
Right. Okay. So now, all right, I'm back.
Okay. So you said nine. You were saying 9 to life.
I got sentenced to 9 years plus life. And then, like I say, I also still had a trailer and murder case.
Gotcha. And how did that lead to you end up doing 24?
Well, eventually I end up taking a deal for voluntary manslaughter on the murder. And so they end up giving me, they ran the 16 concurrent with the 9, but they ran it consecutive to the life. So now instead of 9 years plus life, I ended up with 16 years plus life, which is I had to do 16 years, which was back then half of the 16. Then I would start on the life, and the life sentence was you had to do 7 before you'd be eligible for parole. So that's how I ended up with 16 plus life. I ended up taking a deal, and he ran it concurrent with the 9, but consecutive to the life. So instead of 9 plus life, I just ended up with 16 plus life.
And you were sent to a level 4 180 prison, specifically Salinas.
Right.
Talk to us about, what it's like for an active gang member entering Salinas. And Salinas was a fairly new prison at this time, right?
Extremely new, yes. The yard that I went to, we opened the yard. Actually, the cell that I went into, I was the first one in that cell. It was still dust and screws on the floor and stuff. And by me never being to prison, I didn't even realize how extremely dangerous it was because I had never been to prison before. And it didn't, this is one of those newer prisons. A 180 is like it's a newer prison, a new design. And so, I'm not seeing all these bars and stuff like I anticipated seeing, or things that I saw in the movie. So I really had no idea how dangerous it was until, people started coming in from other prisons and, all these stabbings and stuff started happening. And one thing that's so dangerous about a new prison is you have all the different gangs. You have the Crips, the Bloods, the southern essays. You have the northern essays. You have the whites. Everybody's jockeying for position in space. And in the event these things can't be worked out, sometimes it's worked out through violence. So that's just and then you have, people coming from other prisons and, hey, well, they say that this guy right there in this prison, he told on somebody, so he needs to be stabbed, and it was chaotic. And by me never being in prison before, all that was extremely just eye-opening.
In your opinion, what is more dangerous, prison or jail? Like a county jail versus big prison like Salinas?
Well, I think it just all depends on what county jail you happen to be in. My county, Riverside County, it wasn't nowhere near as dangerous as prison. So, in my experience, it was definitely prison.
At that time, were all the blacks getting together, for numbers, or was it like still on with your enemy? Like if you saw, let's say, a Blood or something like that, are you scrapping off site, or were you guys getting together for numbers, black wise?
In prison, it was like the blacks were more united, and I want to say that I feel like in 1996, 97, 98, up in there, that was pretty much kind of like the end of where, like a lot of black unity, a lot of, especially like Crip on Crip love. Sometimes, you still would have people who would just on the strength of you being a Crip, they would embrace you. And gradually that started fading out. And so there was always, pretty much peace for the most part with the Bloods. They had their little area and we had our area, but we wasn't just clashing and stuff. Matter of fact, when I first left the county jail and got sent to a reception center in Tehachapi, there was a few of us Crips and Bloods. We were sitting at the table playing dominoes together. And it was crazy to me because that was my first interaction with being around Bloods. That was back when, I was just used to being around Crips. And so, but that was, we was respectful. This older dude, older friend, he by the name of Dan Tanner from Long Beach Insane, so he was lacing me just basically on the prison politics. Like, you don't holler cuz in front of the Bloods because it was disrespectful, and vice versa. If a person was going to do that, they had like, areas like the Crips would hang in a certain area, and it was permitted like that. But like in neutral places like the Chow Hall, maybe, the out on the yard where everybody could hear you, it was seen as disrespectful. So, it was just, it was for the most part, a lot of like togetherness and things like that. So it wouldn't cause, riots and stuff like that. Cause That was back when people was really gang banging. And of course, a blood doesn't want to hear a Crip hollering Tuz and vice versa.
Now, you were in there for 24 years. I'm sure you talked with many, many people, you know, throughout that time. What percentage of people would you say, if you could give an estimate, are locked up because someone told on them?
For violent crimes, I would say a large percentage. I would like to say probably 100%, you know, 98, 100%, because there's always, you know, it's always people telling. And, you're going to still have you at least back then, you still had a majority of people, you know, sticking to the code and staying solid. But there's always been people who don't want to go to jail. And I've never ran across anyone who didn't have someone, you know, telling on them in their case.
Listen to that, kids out there who have that ride or die homie. This is my homie, man. We going down together, all that. Listen to what this man just said, dude. Most likely, if your homie is facing football numbers, his ass is going to tell on you.
If you got 5 individuals caught up in a case, 2 of them is telling, at least, you know, 2 of them is going to tell. And I've seen dudes with tough gang banging names come to jail, and you know, these real tough gang banging names, and I won't throw this dude out there, but he came to jail and he was facing 6 years and was in the cell crying. You know, he was looking at 6 years, and you got all these other dudes in there facing life, and you know, he had a real vicious gang banging name, and I believe he had accidentally shot his girlfriend or pointed a gun at her and the gun went off, but you know, he was in the cell crying. So his cellie came out, told everybody and was clowning him, but it's just stuff like, you know, people think it's like this gang banging stuff is a joke, and they act hard until they get caught up in the situation, which reminds me of another quick story I'll share with you. I was a porter at some point in time in the county jail, and I used to get a lot of magazines, a lot of rap magazines, a lot of books. And so this guy, I'd seen him come in and out, and he came in and he said, "Hey man, let me get one of those books." And I said, "What you want, a rap magazine, a double XL?" He said, "No, I need a Bible. I just caught a hot one," which is, for those who don't know, California term for murder is a hot one, you know, but the first thing he wanted was a Bible, you know, but he wasn't thinking about a Bible the day before. And so it just, you know, when you're in there and the walls are closing in on you, sometimes it's, you know, more people than not can't take it.
Now, would you say the average gang member, former gangbanger, suffers from PTSD?
No, I definitely would say so. And when I say gangbanger, I'm talking about the ones who was really out there gang banging, because you know, you may have people from a gang, but everybody's really not out there gang banging, shooting and putting in work. But most definitely for the ones that's really doing it, you know, you have to, I believe, because at some point in time, I think it doesn't sit right with your spirit, you know, to either see people killed, kill people up close, and you know. And by us growing up, you know, especially in our era and generation in the 70s and 80s, when the idealistic man was a certain way, you know, we were taught to just stuff our emotions and hold stuff in. So, you know, you're holding all this stuff in, you know, I'll be the first to admit, you know, I had a lot of crazy dreams in there, you know, my dreams was bothering me and just all types of stuff, you know, so, and those dreams went on for years and years and years. So I definitely would believe it, you know, maybe a lot of people won't admit to it, but most definitely.
2018 you were released, is my math correct?
Right.
2018. Damn. Okay, this is kind of a 2-part question. What was the biggest change to your city after 24 years, and was it better than you left it, or was it worse?
Well, the biggest change, I believe, is just a lot of the areas that weren't once owned by a lot of black families. Everyone's pretty much moved out of there. There are a lot of Hispanics now in the house, you know, who where my friends and stuff grew up in, you know, my grandmother's house, my father's house where I was raised, you know, and then also now you don't see dudes hanging out as much, you know, it's just pretty much, the streets are pretty much empty, you know, as compared to when I was hanging out. We had one certain block that, you know, every day was, you know, dudes is out there hanging out there selling drugs and stuff, and so it seems like, you know, all the crackheads have disappeared too. So, but now it's much more homeless people. But
yes.
So that's the thing that I noticed, you know, right away.
While you were locked up, I'm assuming you were inside writing and stuff like that?
Right. Yeah. Especially in the earlier stages when I was locked up, you know, I used to ride a lot. We would one prison, particularly Ironwood, we would go outside. Maybe I would say 3 to 5 times a week, and be out. You know, you'd have a group of us out there rapping and stuff. So yeah, it was definitely a fun way to pass the time. And you know, you can only go to the cipher so many times and spit the same raps, and so that you know, definitely made me continue to stay writing and stuff.
Let's talk about this new type of music. Have you been keeping your ear to the street? Are you familiar with the drill music scene?
A little bit of the drill music, yes.
Okay, cool. But you know what drill music is for the most part?
Right.
Okay, cool.
Right.
Yeah, to explain to people out there who don't, you know, drill music popularized in Chicago, has moved to places like New York, and it's like it's everywhere now. But what makes this type of music, you know, a little more different is a lot of these guys are being very disrespectful in their lyrics. They're doing disrespectful things like, you know, recording music videos at the enemy's gravesite, and like just really, really disrespectful, and saying the most disrespectful things in song as well. Not only that, Chill, and I'm telling you stuff you may already know, I'm just telling the audience real quick. A lot of these guys are actually writing about what they're doing in the street. So a lot of these cats are getting arrested, and then the feds, all they have to do is listen to the lyrics, and they're like, oh shit, this guy's literally telling the truth. But what are your thoughts on that whole drill scene? How, you know, shit, back in our day, the gangster rappers were lying about what they were doing. Now they're telling the truth.
It's crazy that you say that, right? Because I was just telling a friend about 2 weeks ago. I said the gangster rappers or the drill rappers of today make our gangster rappers pretty much look like librarians. You know, I mean, because the way they're doing it now, they basically just relegated our gangster rappers to really reporters. That's what I can say. You know, Ice Cube, NWA, those guys were reporting what was going on, as opposed to these guys nowadays. They're really out there doing it, and you know, it's crazy, like you say, man. It's extremely disrespectful, and I've even noticed that some of that stuff has made its way to to California. Because when I got out, I watched a whole lot of that stuff, you know, because I was always curious when I was locked up to why maybe, 40 people would get shot over the weekend in Chicago. And so I came home and started watching that YouTube stuff and the drill stuff. And so, yeah, it's really disrespectful, and it's really crazy. And, it's just definitely out of hand, you know.
Yeah, man. What are your thoughts? And this is happening all over the country as well. It started in like Maryland, and then like other courts just started picking it up over the past few years. But what are your thoughts on courts using rap lyrics to lock people up?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because they use the rap lyrics against me as well. You know,
please tell us that story. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Well, I had a song called "On the Run," and so I had mentioned some things about the person who I was accused of shooting, and so when they raided my house, they found those lyrics, and they came to court and read the lyrics and all that old type of stuff. And so I definitely believe I still would have been convicted without the lyrics. But that was just a point that was just another point that the DA wanted to use, I guess, to try to get a conviction. So I definitely think that the rappers nowadays, they got to be smart, because if they can make any type of connection to that, they're definitely gonna use that, because the DA is looking for a conviction. Once he hones in on an individual and he believes that person is guilty, he's gonna do all he can to try to find you guilty. So if he has to bring your rap lyrics in there, he has to bring your mama in there, he's gonna do it. And so yeah, dudes definitely need to be smart. And now, with all the time they're given, it's really, it's just basically telling on yourself.
R.I.P. Draco, R.I.P. Dolph, Slim 400, Mo 3, King Von, FBG. I could literally go on, dog. We'll be here for 30 minutes if I named all the rappers who died, just in the past few years. Why do you think a lot of rappers are dying right now?
Honestly, I believe it's the culture and it's social media. Now that's another thing that I noticed when I came home. It seems like it's cool to be disrespectful. And back in our days, man, we may be out there, hanging out, smoking weed or doing, but we may see the homie's mom come through or the homie's father come through.
Put the weed away. Yeah.
Most definitely. We take our hats off, we hide the beer, we speak, all that type of stuff. Now it's just that it's like no one is above being disrespected, and then also with the social media, the social media, this spread where, everybody is just cool. It's cool to be disrespectful. And I was talking about that the other day. I don't understand why, these rappers a lot of them is getting big money. And I don't understand why you creating beefs for yourself where you can't even enjoy the money. Either you're going to prison or you're going to jail. I mean, if you're talking all this stuff, eventually, you're going to run across somebody that you're disrespecting. And so I don't understand why a person would even put himself in that position. And so to me, it's like they don't have the right people. It's a combination of a few things. They don't have the right people in their corner telling them that this is not the avenue to go down, And like you say, all these rappers who passed away is crazy, but it's like they don't realize they're inviting this type of stuff, because after it would seem like after you see six or seven rappers die going along this path, you would change your path. But, once again, I attribute that to just being young, being dumb, being stupid like I was when I was young. I'm watching everybody go to jail and I'm thinking I'm not going to go to jail. I remember telling my father he told me, you better be careful. They're giving life for people who being convicted of murder. And I remember I told him, hey, don't worry, Dad, I'm not going to get caught. So it's just, it's a combination of a lot of things, and immaturity is one,
My last question for you, and then I would love to discuss your channel and what you have coming up next. Let's go back. 14 is around the time you said you really started doing your thing. If you could hypothetically, Chill, talk to a 14-year-old you, what would you tell him?
That's a good question. And I tell her, just to get out of the streets immediately, change your path because, life and time is precious. And those are two things that you can't get back, and you can lose any one of them at any moment when you're in the street. Like I say, if you're really out there gang banging, you can lose those. And not to really get off course, but one thing that sometimes somewhat disturbed me sometimes when I was in prison is I'd have dudes who claimed they was gang members ask me, what was it like doing life? And they would tell me, man, I don't think that I could do life. Then my response was, well, then you really wasn't out there gang banging. Because if you're really gang banging, you can get life. You can get life just being in the car with your homeboy. And I actually ran across a couple of people who fell asleep in the car. They homeboy ended up shooting. They stuck to the code and didn't say nothing. So now you got a life sentence. And so, so I would definitely I would have told myself just, to change my course and find something better productive to do with my life,
What made you start your channel, man?
Well, my channel was basically, I started my channel to put my raps on there. Like I say, I had a love for rap at some point in time when I was in prison. I had stopped rapping because I didn't think that I was ever going to get out and be able to do anything with it. But I always had that passion. So once I was released, I hopped right back into it. And so I started rapping and I wanted to, release some of my music. My plan was to make some mixtapes and put them on there and stuff. And so at some point in time, I was going to this producer and he called COVID. And so at that time I had like 173 subscribers and I didn't want, I didn't want my people to stop checking for my page. So I was thinking like, well, dang, what can I do? And it dawned on me that people were always extremely intrigued when I told them that I had done 24 years in prison. They want to hear about, the stories and what happened and what was it like up in there. And so I just started telling some stories about being in prison. And one day I looked up and one of my stories had probably done 7,000 or 8,000 views in maybe about 5 or 6 hours. And it climbed to somewhere around 16,000, and so I just continued. So actually I got into doing the prison stories, just really luck. It was, basically just luck.
Thank you for tuning in to DustyVisionTV. Please hit that like button if you have not already. And if this is your first time joining the channel and you like what you hear, please hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this video, you just might appreciate this bonus clip I'm about to play for you right now. But apparently the IRS aren't too happy with Big U. Let me grab my phone so I can play this clip for you. Yeah, the IRS are not too happy with Big U.
And tax records show millions of dollars have poured into the nonprofit the feds say was the center of a criminal enterprise. Our investigative reporter Eric Leonard joins us now with more on how this organization was being funded and where all that money was. Eric.
Hey, Michael. Well, the most surprising discovery that we've had so far is that this nonprofit called the Ex-Offender Fellowship, which was also doing business under another nonprofit's name called Developing Options, that the city says were essentially one in the same. And they say the state has told us that those entities have faced suspensions by the state tax authority, the Franchise Tax Board.
So all this mumbo jumbo boring talk, allegedly millions of dollars. And this is what this news story is saying. This is NBC, and we all know that NBC is not the most reliable news source, but this is NBC saying that millions of dollars allegedly could have been funneled through big U's nonprofit organizations.
While the city of LA has been paying millions of dollars into these organizations, and the amounts have...
The city of LA is paying millions of dollars into these organizations. Once again, with all these Doge cuts, they're looking into everything. Don't think your little funky $50,000 they don't care about. The IRS is going to come back for their funky ass $50,000. You know when someone owes you money and you've been, you hawking them down like, dog, can I get my $100 back that I loaned you, you know what I'm saying? And then one day they come in, here's your funky ass $100, dog. Man, now it's funky? Now my $100 that you needed 3 weeks ago is funky. Now that I got to pay my rent and you told me you would have me pay, now it's funky ass $3. They're going to come for your funky ass $50,000. Trust me when I tell you that. They're going to come for you. But let's get back to this. They're talking about big U's organizations possibly funneling millions. And this is just, I'm quoting NBC, not the most reliable news source, about this.
At least in the last few years. The California Franchise Tax Board issued a suspension notice in April 2024 for one of the nonprofits operated by Eugene Henley Jr., who federal prosecutors in LA announced Wednesday faces racketeering and corruption charges for allegedly misusing money meant for the city's gang intervention efforts. Henley's...
Now, if this really did happen, that is a really crappy thing. Who was the other gangster they took down? Didn't they take Al Capone down because of his taxes or something like that? They couldn't get him on any of the other crazy that he did. I think it was Al Capone. Don't quote me on that, but one of the big gangsters back in the day, they couldn't get him on anything. He covered all of his bases and everything, but one thing he didn't do is he didn't file his taxes correctly one year, and they gave that nigga life, motherfucker, life. Get him. We got him. We didn't get you on all the 800 things that you did out there, but we got your ass on. And the IRS don't play, guys.
Most recent contract with the city shows a payment of nearly $800,000 due in July 2024, the final installment of a 4-year agreement that paid his groups more than $2.2 million for intervention. Henley, seen here in a red carpet photo, began forming the nonprofits in 2009, according to state records. They began receiving city gang intervention funding as far back as 2011. Between 2018 and 2023, LA Controller payment records show
Doge, Elon Musk, they're coming for you. They're coming for every penny, man. They're coming for every penny. And a few $1 million, that's a lot. Couple million, that's a lot of money to them right now. That'll add up. Add that in. Add that in. They don't care. Add that in. They're going to come and get their funky ass $50,000. All you people who thought you got away with those PPP scams back in the BPP loans scam, same shit. I remember seeing people on Instagram, hey, man, I got the hook 'em on PPP scam loan. Hey, come holla at me. All you need is a valid bank account. I'm like, are they really doing this on the internet? Oh, they're coming back for you too. All you ding-dongs on Instagram, I remember you guys. 2020, 2021, like, what are you doing? You're telling everybody that you got the connection on PPP scams, and then what? Then once you get arrested, now it's racism and it's the white man's fault? Man, y'all, my people are so off the fucking charts.
Henley's groups received around $500,000 a year. Then, in 2023, a significant increase that followed then-Mayor Eric Garcetti's efforts to increase funding for intervention work after the rise in violent street crime that followed the COVID-19 pandemic. Looking at the tax records for the Ex-Offender Fellowship, which includes the city money and private donations.
All right, I'm bored. It goes on for about a minute and a half. But basically, it sounds like even if all the other stuff ain't true, if he's just taking off just on this, that's going to be rough, man. That's going to be rough because you know what people don't like? Is when you misuse funds that are meant for helping children. And I'm not saying he did this. I hope none of this is true. Because you know why? All it does is lead a bunch more black people to prison. And what does that do? That keeps white folks working. All the people in the court, they got a job because of you. Goddamn person who drives the bus from prison to prison has a job because of you. The people who invest in prisons have a job because of you. And music executives who push the music that makes you want to go out there and take out each other, they're the ones profiting off of them, not you. Once again, we say this is part of the game. Chalk it up to the game. This is the game. Why are we the only ones that lose the game? Name me one person of color who has won the game. I can name hundreds, probably thousands, maybe even millions of white folks who won the game that we're playing. They ain't even playing. They're just waiting for us to put in our last quarter until it says the end and your black ass is sent off to prison. Real talk. I'm sure we'll be discussing this Brick Baby, Loose Cannon, and Big U situation more on my show. Like I said, there's so much information coming out right now. It's crazy. So I'm going to just let it mellow out for a little while. I'm going to let everybody talk about it. And then I might come back in about a week or so and share my thoughts. But other than that, I'm going to get out of here. Please hit that like button if you haven't already. And if this is your first time joining the channel and you like what you hear, please hit that subscribe button. It's only as of recent that word became a term of endearment. Before NWA in the 80s, no one was calling himself the N-word as a term of endearment. When they called someone the N-word, they were calling him, "What's up, man? What's up, man?" Like it was all, you were the enemy. You were like a piece of trash N-word. That's what it was. Go back to people who are in their 50s and 60s and 70s now. When they were growing up, nah, man, N-word, that was not in their vocabulary. Unless they were talking about that N-word that robbed them. Yeah, man, don't be hanging around with Tyrell. That N-word be robbing them, man. That's how they referred to N-words. It wasn't like, that's my N-word. I love him. I'm going to die for him. I love him, man. That's my N-word. Oh, that wasn't until the 80s, man. You young kids who think that's been around forever. Because I'm still old enough a little bit. I was 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 when I was in the 80s, but I still know shit. I remember shit. I talked to people. I researched. Ain't nobody before NWA. NWA popularized the N-word. Straight up. They had a group called NWA. N-words with attitude. Man, could you imagine how that went over back then? Because once again, people weren't walking around N-wording each other like that. Nowadays, you release a group called NWA, yeah, join the line. There's 17 others. But back then, NWA, no, wait, what? And they were ran by a Jewish dude named Jerry Heller, who was representing them. Wait, what? Yes, take your. That's why NWA is so revolutionary, because they were doing things. They did things like that. I mean, the name right away. The name was controversial as heck. And I used to love hearing the newscasters, because NWA made news all the time at the beginning. Who is this group out of Compton who has the balls to call themselves NWA? N-words with attitude. And they would say the first, sometimes they would say the first word. And they would either use an A, niggas, or they would use an ER, ngers. With attitude. They're this new popular group out of Compton, California. A small town in Los Angeles County with 70,000 people, full of Crips and Bloods. And they are their representatives. And tonight we're doing a special on them because they are selling tapes. They have sold 5 million copies without any radio play. We want to see what's behind this. That's how all the newscasters sounded. That kind of sounds like me, huh? Damn, I didn't have to change my voice that much. My damn nasally ass annoying voice. Screw you anyway. But anybody out there who agreed with me, by the way. But NWA, man, they were, and look, I got Eazy-E right behind me. One of my favorites. NWA was the reason I fell in love with hip hop. Hearing Eazy-E's voice on Boys in the Hood, I was like, okay, I need more of this. Hearing those beats that Dre and Yellow were putting together. Hearing Ice Cube. I said I needed more of this. And after that, I was all in. And it's very ironic that the first group that made me fall in love with hip-hop, literally NWA, is a group that now I wouldn't even agree with their name. So I can only imagine how 40-year-olds were feeling back then hearing NWA, especially 40-year-old black folks. Could you imagine that? First time I ever heard what NWA stood for was from a Mexican dude, Latino. I asked him, I said, he had an NWA hat on. I hadn't put two and two together that Eazy-E, NWA. So I was, what does NWA mean? Or I don't know where we saw NWA. Maybe it was on a tape or something. I think he was wearing a hat. Could be wrong. But I said, what does NWA stand for? He said, niggas with attitude. I said, okay. And it was nothing. It was like, then we talked about going get some fries at the burger stand right after that. There was no racism or anything behind it. It was just, I asked him a question. He gave me an answer. He probably didn't even know what niggas meant. He probably, now looking back, I bet he didn't even know what niggas meant. Because at that time, I was living in a mostly Hispanic, predominantly Mexican neighborhood. No one was dropping the M-bomb. Maybe the parents. No, they would call us, yate, little black bug. Well, they wouldn't say it to my face, but yeah, I'm sure I was called that quite a few times living in some of the neighborhoods that I lived in by very certain people. That's the other funny part, man. I'm not going to use the word grew up. I lived in a predominantly Hispanic area for some very significant years of my life. I mean, middle school, that's pretty significant, right? End of elementary, right into middle school, and end of middle school, almost going into high school. I lived in a Hispanic neighborhood, Bell Gardens, city of Bell Gardens, a city that is near and dear to my heart to this day. I still visit Bell Gardens. My favorite burrito joint is in Bell Gardens, so I always go there. Shout out to Los Altos right there on Eastern and Florence, right there by the Big Five used to be right there. Y'all remember the Big Five, dog? Everybody remembers the Big Five. They got the food for less, son. But I never experienced flat out racism. Isn't as being, and look, I know I'm light right now because it's wintertime and it's cold as hell, but I get dark as hell. I get dark during the summer, like dark. My credit score goes down. I get pulled over by cops more. I leave my baby mama. Like during the summertime, I get dark as hell, and I never experienced racism. I can't think of in Bell Gardens. Now, when I moved to Downey, whoo, man, they still had some racist white folk there just for a little bit. That was like the trail end of Downey having white people, Caucasian folks there, and they did not like the influx of the brown folks and black folks coming in to Downey, and there were some, I experienced racism at Downey High School my freshman year. And then after that, it was pretty much, and now even today, it's Downey's all brown. They should call it Brownie. Hey, Downey is Brownie. Yeah. But I love that about it. They call it the Mexican Beverly Hills. I don't know how I feel about that, but, whatever. It's a nice city. But long story short, I didn't experience racism in Bell Gardens and predominantly Hispanic folks, but I did when I went to Downey. And that's for my friends out there who think blacks and browns don't get along, or you hear this other false narrative on YouTube that blacks and browns don't get along. Man, blacks and browns get along perfectly fine. Now, if you're a gangster in the streets and you live a certain lifestyle and you adhere to a certain code, then yeah, it's probably not. It's not the same way. But if you are an average, regular civilian and you live next to a Hispanic person or a black person, odds are you guys get along very, very well. But I don't know how I trailed off or why I even trailed off into that. But NWA popularized a word that I think is detrimental to us, and we really need to stop calling each other that because it mentally makes you feel niggerish. You feel you want to feel like an N-word that don't give an F. And no, I'm not no N-word that don't give an F. I'm not. I give an F. I got a house. I got a family. I got things I got to take care of, yo. So I give an F. I give a big F. That sounded weird, didn't it? Anyway. People are posting this fake video of Fat Joe allegedly getting booed on stage in Chicago. Shame on you podcasters and YouTubers who are posting fake news. First of all, anyone who knows anything about editing 101 knows those boos were added in. The sound is horrible. It doesn't even sound right. And I'm legit deaf in my left ear. 100% deaf in this ear. And with one good ear that barely works itself, I could tell that video was fake by the boos. How did you idiots think that was real? Please don't procreate. If you're listening to the sound of my voice and you didn't know that video was fake, please don't go out there and create more stupid children because I'm tired of taking care of you guys. That video was 100% fake and it's getting passed around like it's real news. That's so weird. Are FBA so desperate that they're now spreading fake videos and passing them off as facts? I mean, anyone who has a phone, which is everybody, can easily type in Fat Joe Concerts 2025. I did it. And guess what I saw? And guess what you'd see if you dumb idiots did 2 seconds of research? You'd see that Fat Joe was at something called Juicy Fest 2025 from January 15th to January 19th. Along with Ludacris, Jeremiah, and Akon. In Perth, Australia. You stupid person. You dumb mother effer. You stupid YouTubers who just post stuff without doing simple research. You are the scum of the planet. Fake news. Fake news. Fake news. And shame on you. Are you that desperate for views? See, what happens when you post fake stuff like that, you lose your credibility. While you dumb morons are posting fake news all over the internet, Fat Joe is in Australia. Getting to the bag. As a journalist, I pride myself on doing research on a topic before I open my big fat mouth. But I see, according to my YouTube timeline, that not everyone lives by those standards. Fake news, fake news, fake news. The desperation is sad. Are you that upset that the Fat Joe news has died down? That, yeah, it didn't make as big of an impact as you thought it would? You thought you'd ruin Fat Joe, but Fat Joe's in Australia. Get performing at a damn fest, probably in front of hundreds of thousands of people. Probably got paid $100,000 to do it. So you're like, the story's dying down a little. We need to create some fake news to keep this thing going. The desperation is ridiculous, and I'm getting to a point where I'm embarrassed to even tell people I have a YouTube channel. I don't even tell people, like, I would say most of the people I hang around don't even know. I mean, most people know, I guess, whatever. But I don't really go out spreading the word that I have a YouTube channel. Maybe my shit would be much bigger if I did spread the word about my own show, but I would never do anything like this to get views, maybe get a few subscribers. I mean, did you ding-dongs really listen to that video and think that it was real? Like, are your ears bad? How did you not know that was fake? And not only that, before you start posting it as fact, why don't you guys just do a little simple research? It took me 2 seconds to type in Fat Joe concerts 2025, and I got his whole concert schedule. And all I had to do was look at what dates he was in when this video went viral just a few days ago. And guess where Fat Joe was? I'll be goddamned. He was in Australia. He was nowhere near Chicago. And rappers get booed all the time, by the way. Like, so don't take this little silly thing as some sort of win, FBA. That's a silly win. Rappers get booed all the time. The most popular rappers get booed all the time. I've been to places where popular rappers have gotten booed. It happens. So stop acting like this is like, oh my God, we made this big impact. FBA forever, unite. And Voltron, knock it off, dude. It's getting silly. It's getting desperate. And if you're all about facts, just let the facts speak for themselves. Don't create and repost BS. And I've been seeing some big channels do it too, and I'm ashamed. Headline: Fat Joe gets booed in Chicago. As soon as I saw that, I went down that rabbit hole. Within 5 minutes, I knew he was in Australia. I was like, he's in Australia. If this schedule says right, he's in Australia. It's like, what? What are you? You journalist? Are you journalist, or are you just some YouTube dude trying to get a couple $100 more on his YouTube check every month? That's the sad part. And that's why YouTube is going to die a slow death, and people are going to start migrating elsewhere. Shout out to my Rumble channel, by the way. Please subscribe to me on Rumble, RUMBLE. Rumble, it's an app. Subscribe to me. DustyVisionTV, all one word. It's a little less censored over there. The censorship over here is crazy. The amount of fake news over here is crazy. And you ding-dongs out there just can't deal with the fact that Fat Joe is living his best life right now while you're probably still living with your mother. And that's the fact. Comment down below. Were you one of these idiots that posted Fat Joe getting booed on stage, that fake news? Did one of your favorite podcasters or YouTubers post it? Were they proud and happy, like they were there and shit, throwing bottles? You weren't even there, because it never happened in Chicago. Who knows where that video comes from? I don't know where that video comes from. Do you know? I have no idea where the video comes from. All I know is it wasn't at that time. So knock it off with the fake news. It makes everyone look bad. And it only makes Fat Joe come out and look like the winner in all this. But yeah, comment down below. What do you think? Am I tripping? Who's tripping in this? The people that spread the fake news or the person that calls out the people that spread the fake news? Let me know. And please hit that like button before you head out if you haven't already. And if this is your first time joining the channel and you were entertained by what you hear, please hit that subscribe button. Talk to you soon. Peace.